Welcome back to another episode of our Mega-lo-Mania rewrite in Unreal Engine. So we're just continuing on from yesterday, working on the menus. Yesterday we had good progress on the research menu. We've got kind of the basic functionality in place and interaction. There's not really a great deal more we can do with this screen. I think it's just about getting that core game tick working to kind of clean up the timer. So we're going to try and put the research or the designers and our main population onto the main menu screen, and that should be fairly straightforward with what we've already done so far. So hopefully there'll be no surprises in that lot. So I'm not going to change much with the core layout. The bits that we have are actually fairly haphazardly placed. There's no layouts in this case. We've just got all of the specific images placed basically where they need to be. Now we may need to change that moving forward, particularly with the resources, because they do change whether they're gathered as is indicated by the green or whether they're mined, things like that. We don't really want all of that logic within the root menu. We want to keep the root menu kind of quite clean in terms of the logic that it has, but we can see there's the time there, and what we'll actually do is we'll get another screenshot of in-game where we actually have time over or under the light bulb as well. Sorry, designers under the light bulb as well, so we can see how that lines up. So we could probably change, well, we've got our tech man and we've called that the tech level icon or image in other cases, so we make sure that that's consistent. Oh, didn't mean to close that. Palette, there we go. To try and make sure that our tech level icon and our text line up nicely, we'll put the tech level icon into this vertical box along with a bit of text. And we'll use the font size that we've obviously got for, or been using for our menu, our research menu. That's the one we wanted. Not the research menu specifically, is it? Because it's the. So we use the font size from our task. So that's all kind of set up. It looks good. It's bold and 6. So we'll try and keep that. Well, the root menu's gone there. We'll put the root menu with the others. So 6. Default that to nice and centered. Our little man can be centered as well. And then we'll just position that back over the top of where he should be. If we could change the grid, it should be about where he needs to be. Kind of like a tiny bit too high, but that's lower than pixels. We can add a little bit of padding, I think, to the top of the text. I think again we may have done padding on the task. No padding there nor there, so maybe we didn't. Maybe we should have done, but that kind of lines it up a bit better, so the padding works there. We've got 2 in the top. Maybe that's why this, if we run this again, we get that little jolt when we select something. That's probably not to do with the padding, because it actually goes down when we select a task, but let's see. We add some padding there. Yeah, it kind of just miscenters it. unfortunately, because we don't finish research or cancel research, we only get to see the jump once. I think we need that, at least not in that context. So in this case, our canvas panel stretches the entire screen, whereas I think in our research menu, our canvas panel, no, our canvas panel still does, but then we've got it all in a vertical box. Don't know if there's definitely a level of kind of rows in here, but again, we probably don't want to complicate it with a vertical box. We just put some research on. Change this one now. We assume that we kind of want it positioned where the last one was, about there. We need to change the texture group. So we keep the sharp pixels. That should pretty much put it exactly where the other one was. A bit over to the left, I think. Bit awkward that it's 161, but that's where we had it before. Now we should, if we get another bit of text, another vertical box. Actually, yeah, this the amount of designs actually defaults to just 0. Don't know why I thought that it should be prefixed, because it doesn't appear that it is. Never mind. It's basically the same bits and pieces that we put on the other one. Seems a bit lower down. but I guess that's just because it is a bit lower down. So it looks like on the original image. Where have they gone? So our arrow is anchored to the bottom right. Maybe we need to anchor our new vertical boxes to the bottom right also. Hopefully that will bring them back. Yep, there we go. Yeah, we could do with getting that text to line up. Just take the top off that, probably will do it. Yep. Okay, and so what we did in our research menu to keep the designers up to date was that within the tick of the view we simply update those two values. So in the one case we set the remaining time, in the other case we set the allocated population. The remaining time one has a side effect of or additional functionality of setting the timer frame. Obviously in the case of the root menu, neither the timer frame is not relevant, but I wonder, before we use the border, and basically we had everything in the border. Yeah, borders can't have multiple children, yeah, so never mind. Ooh. So this will be our, what do we call it here? In the task, we simply called it the allocated population text. So in this case we'll be a bit more specific. Designers, both of which needs to be variables. We'll rename this so we'll put the update in the tick as well. So we'll start with getting the player controller. Content sensitive, get the player. Pretty much kind of like what we've done in the research menu and the root, I think, and the task even. So we'll just, I think, just those two. And then we can promote that to a variable and rename that to our so we can put some of these into different categories. So maybe we want the enter blueprints to be in a category of navigation. Okay, maybe not. I've had that a few times where I've tried to apply images to a category and it doesn't seem to like it. It's a bit annoying because there's going to be potentially quite a lot of things here. would be nicer if they weren't all within the default category, but nonetheless. Okay, so now we've got our player controller. From our player controller we can get the designers. What did we call it in this context? Current designers count. We might need to come up with some better terminology for that, but and then we want to do that to the unallocated and the designer. Handle the awkward conversion. All we need. Okay, so they both say 0, 0. Probably isn't correct because our unallocated count should be more than 0. Said we had some warnings. Oh, yeah, forgot to tie that up. That's where it all went wrong. There we go. So now we should have the right numbers all over the place. Yep. So within the game, lost already. Within the game, I think the count for the unallocated people is grey, so it greys out numbers that you can't actually modify. Again, we can do that. We know that this one's never going to be modifiable. I can give it a shadow. So this whole component is not clickable. And yeah, we just want to make the text a bit grey. Yeah, so it's just subtle different, just so that people can see that that's not something they can modify. Whereas once we've got a design in place, it's clear that you can modify one and not the other. So we need to make that happen. So the vertical box itself should be self-hit test invisible. The enter button obviously needs to be visible because that's what we click to go in, and the text itself, the designer population, needs to be visible too. Now, so we kind of missed a part. to actually be able to left click, right click on the text or the bit in here, we had to put it into a border, and we don't have a border in this case. We only want the text to be left click, right click, ball. So we do need to drop a border in here. We need to make the border so that it's just a box, or border, sorry, so we don't get that awkward background. It looks like it's sized it okay for once. Normally it kind of just messes everything up. Text looks in about the right place. It's fitting correctly. So that looks fine. Now we can have our create our bindings for the left click, or the mouse down, and the mouse up. So this is kind of where it, if we've done all the previous bit well and nicely abstract, then it should be very straightforward to make this work. So we're going to call, because it's generic name here, we're going to call this the on mouse button down allocate designers, and this one is mouse button up. It's not really allocating because it could be deallocating as well, so we'll just take that out. Maybe call it modify. So on the mouse button down part, we need to figure out whether we're left clicking or right clicking. We can jump back over here. So in this case we are left click, right click checking, branching based on that, using our reference to the player controller and our task type to call on the player controllers to set allocate population, and then just handling the results. So we should be fairly safe with just taking all of that. We have a player controller reference. We may have to replace it. We will just replace that one, just make sure it's talking about the right one. Separate our boxes a bit more. We should just be able to tie this one up. To all the ins and outs, and hopefully that will mean it will work. Mouse. So we don't need the task type in this case, because the task type is specific to the fact that we're clicking on the research. So we can just hard code that to be the design. And back over in our task for the mouse up, again we can take that. Yep. That one. Position it where we want it. Don't need the task type, so we just preset it. Doesn't seem to be working. It's visible. Makes any difference. Maybe it was clicking on the text. Nope. Yeah, so it doesn't seem to be catching that click for some reason. Maybe it's because the parent was set as non-visible. Still no. So that one shouldn't, because it's self-hit test invisible shouldn't affect the children. We know that going into the research one still works, which is set to visible. The border set with visible, but the text itself don't know if that makes any difference. No. Oops. Made it full screen before, but let's not do that. Well, that's awkward. Can't see any real reason why the light bulb works, but the text doesn't seem to be capturing the mouse. Doesn't really matter what we click on there. It's enabled, it's visible, got the mouse bindings. Okay, so it knows the mouse gone over it. But it doesn't know it's got clicked on. It doesn't really make any sense. These are the right way around, aren't they? It's down, it's down, it's up, it's up. Bound that one to the same down function. Okay, that one works, obviously. Maybe it's got something to do with the fact that the population's in the way. And that's capturing the mouse, even though it doesn't actually have any events here. We make that collapsed. The box is too small now. not going so well for some reason. I don't understand why. If we just put the text to the right, none of that bit is clickable at all, even though this is working or implemented very similar to how the population container is. Population container obviously has stuff in it. Hit text invisible. The man is visible, and our text is visible. I wonder if making these hit text invisible and hit text invisible here, so that affects it. No. There's obviously the awkward bug there that it stops. If the mouse comes out of it, we lose the event to stop the click. Okay, so I'll have to fix that in a bit. But the hit text invisible on the items in it hasn't affected it. What else have we got? So why is it not? Well, this one worked, didn't it? If we do down as well, up and down. Center our text again. Put that back to a border. So our second box is working, so what I'll try and do is now just take that border and replace that one. See if that works still. Yeah, so that works. I mean, it's not great, but it works. Now we'll make it a border. Yeah, still works. Looks like exactly the same thing, tied up in exactly the same way. Don't know why it didn't work to start with. Obviously we can allocate researchers without actually having a researcher, so we can address that pretty quickly. We have the mouse button move functions causing us some warnings. Get rid of that. So we want to say that allocate population, which is our little helper function. That's not a problem. Start allocate designers. Here we go. So this bit just says we should allocate designers and set that timer. Really, just need to add the branch in there. And in that case we want to say current design not equal to none. So if it's not equal to none, which is true, then carry on. Otherwise we just completely ignore it. So now setting that doesn't make any difference. And that works. That solved that problem. What I don't know though is this one has a Mousemove event. The Mousemove event works for when we're moving over it, but I don't know if it knows when we move off it. I'll just call it move. So what we don't know is how to and see what we can get from this. Value there seems to be the same no matter which direction we come from. And these are different variables, but obviously so I'm not really sure how we can utilize the mouse move. So mouse move tells us that we're moving over it, but not that we've moved out of it. And there is no out event. I think some of the other containers have a mouse out. Well, it's not the panel because we've got the panel there. Let's see what. So none of the panels have any out events. Text box has change. Now the border has the mouse and the mouse move. Okay, so a button has hovered and unhovered. So very limited interaction. Does a custom widget have, if we have a task? No, task doesn't have any explicit events, but task. No, because we don't have the click event in this context either. See if these work. Okay, so that works with the user being in that task space. That's acceptable for what we need, so we can basically call the mouse button up code. We are within the task here. So that now, if we hold and click, it does actually stop running. So that solves it in that context. In this context, a little bit more difficult because that's not a custom widget. That event doesn't look like we have. It says the event is only for cosmetic non-gameplay actions. Not sure if you'd consider that cosmetic only, but it does the job. The UI interaction seems a bit haphazard. Certain things can do certain things, but not other things for some reason. Like the border can do all the nice click interaction, but the button can't. It doesn't really make any sense. I don't see why all of the widgets don't have the same interaction capabilities. Okay, so the only other thing we want to do, we need to make sure, yeah, that's fine. We want to make sure that when we leave this space, we don't continue to allocate people. But that does mean we're going to have to make this a custom widget, which we'll just have to do that, won't we? I mean, that's not too bad, because the concept of having an icon, some text, and the ability to enter a space and deallocate population to it is going to happen for both all the research, the construction, building the mine, the factory, the laboratory, and doing manufacturing, and doing changing the population for resource gathering. So the concept's actually going to apply in a couple of places, so not that bad. But what we don't have is a clean way to say this is bound to this kind of player controller data set at this point in time. So it's going to be a bit haphazard to start with, but we may be able to improve that. So that's definitely going to have to become a custom widget. For that though, yeah, it's kind of made worse actually, because the next bit that we wanted to do was we only really want to put the designer population if the player's current design, or if the player's actually doing a design. The text shouldn't show up to put it wrong. If it's not equal to none, set that text. Yeah, sorry, it is obviously working, it's just I've defaulted it here to be 0, 0. And that's great. We don't have the mouse leave, so we can move the mouse and let go of it and it still carries on, but for that we need a new widget. Really know what to call it, so we're going to call it a task shortcut. No, is it? This doesn't apply to anywhere else. It's only the root menu that we've called it, the root menu screen that has this. So we'll call it a root task because it also does the navigation. That's something we're going to have to take into account. So much like our task here, we'll kind of design it similarly in terms of the structure of the widgets. Well, this is a horizontal box, but we know really the root task, we just want it as a vertical box. And we want an image and text in there, or wrapped around a border. Oh no, sorry, wrong one, we're looking at the wrong one. Here. Vertical box, icon, border, text. That's what we'll do here. Border in there. Image. Not two actually. And text. So that's our primary container. We don't actually interact with that, so we don't need it as a variable. Hit test invisible. This is our image. So call this the navigation image. Border is what we interact with in terms of clicking and stuff. So we'll create the bindings for that. And the text box will be our allocated population. I think it's going to look a bit weird because it's all very stretched, but that's okay. Default the text to an empty piece of text. Oh, that's gone. Oh, and change the font. Text and bold. Centered at the top. Maybe we won't have it as that. We'll maybe have something in there just so that we can see that it's rendering okay. Okay, so handle our events. And so yeah, that's fine. Should probably be like that actually. The text is at the justified middle anyway, so we'll do that with our root task. Stretch it over the full lot and then middle. So we really want the root task not to really do a great deal. We need a function to set the image. That will accept a sprite or paper sprite. So I know we've created this what we've got sprite image here to kind of make setting the sprite image easy. It stops the duplication of this, but by using that, we're removing the native use of the image with wrapping it around our own thing. So I just find it a little bit nicer, since the code to actually set the sprite is really now only just two calls. find it a little bit more future-proof, perhaps, unless they change it completely. What is the button I'm looking for? Brush. Just a little bit cleaner to do it directly instead of use my custom widget for this, since it's just that. Might be a problem if they decide that that process isn't good enough and they want to make it simpler and I have to go around and change a whole bunch of places, but yeah, I just prefer to use the native one if possible in this case. So we have the set image function that can be called, and we need a, do you want set text? Yeah. We call it set population actually. And that will take, so normally the population is going to be handled externally as an integer, so that's what we'll handle it here. That way it's up to this widget to control how it shows it. Doing that. So our two functions, set text and set population, we want to I wonder, at the moment this one in the event graph is handling the on mouse leave itself. If we take that away and then we drop in so just move that down a bit so we can drop in our new root task widget, size that to the content, root task designer, that needs to be 16 by 16, back over here. Okay, so that looks quite good. So we can get the positioning right, we will, so by default the image is just like a white box. What we'll do is we'll make it slightly grayer, see-through box, gives us the chance to kind of position it so the image is nicely aligned, like so. Because obviously now within this context of the root widget, we don't know what that's going to be. That's up to the root widget to define. Hopefully if we do it during the pre-construct, it will actually sort itself out. So we want to take our root task, as we've called it, so we'll have to change that, and we'll call this the research task. Task isn't particularly the nicest word, but again we'll stick with it. So I'm just seeing if can we do it cleanly, because to start with we've got within the pre-construct we've got to set the image, and we know what the image is going to be. Anchor it to the bottom right. So yeah, the sprite, we don't have access to the sprite anywhere, so we're going to have a variable with our we'll call them the navigation sprites, and this will be a paper sprite, and we'll have it'd be nice if we didn't have to have many variables, but we need to have at least one for the research and one for the manufacturing. Then we've got a more dynamic one for the construction and a more dynamic one for the resource gathering. But maybe we'll call this the research sprite instead. So having it as an array kind of means that we can bundle them all into one, but complicates what this is. We'll put it into the category of painting. That keeps it sorted. Make it read only. Make it private. Compile the blueprint so we can set our default. Somewhere in here is our light bulb. Yep. Need to give it a better name, but it is a bit tedious having to go through all of the icons and name them appropriately. It's still saying error. Yeah, really? Can't pass read only, but oh well. Okay, so aside from it being slightly invisible, yeah, I guess the concept of having it as a grey, half viewable box is not going to work. So I'll have to have it full Optimus opacity even. Looks better. So we can't interact with it. The hyphen's still there. Again, we're just going to have to get rid of that. What we could probably do is within the root task itself on the event construct. So if we do it on the pre-construct, it will hide it in the editor. If we do it on the construct, it won't. So if we set text here to just empty, and we could probably do that with the opacity as well. It kind of solves that problem. So now we can go back in here and do 0.25 again. So in the designer mode, we can see that it's showing the hyphen, so we can see where that text is, we can see that where the icon is and see through it. Whereas when we play, we get full solid. Still looks like it's a bit grey. Maybe that grey colour is tinting it. Let's just find out if we go back here. Maybe it's just me. Task. Colour. Nope, the colour does affect the colour of the icon. So we will have to keep that as just plain old white. It doesn't actually matter when we make it a see-through anyway, when we have the opacity. Okay, so we've kind of got the icon in place, but obviously there's no updating to it. So we need a way for the root menu to update that nice and cleanly. So we're going to have a function. We're going to call it update research task, and research task get. So we want the current design, designer's count, player controller, conversion to text we might as well keep, designer population, and the branch, all of that. We lost the player controller for that one. Oops. Did not want to do that. And in our function, drop all that back in. Set text. Set population. So again, update the research task says if we're doing some research, which is all this bit that we had before, then set that text. So we don't actually need to convert it to text here. Actually, let's leave that as it was now. Like that. So that should keep the text value consistent. Oh yeah, we forgot to call the function. No, we'll put it afterwards, because doing the primary population just kind of makes sense to do first. Okay. Great, so the number is there. Can't interact with it yet, even though we can interact with the previous version still. So the bit that gets a bit complicated is the root task. We don't really want the root task to know that it's showing research or showing something else. We don't want to effectively tie it to any particular behavior. So we've got to kind of propagate things out of it. Let's see what we've got access to, if anything, here already within our update research task function. Probably not our research task function, to be fair. Don't think we can have an event in there, so let's see what we get from this context. Yeah, so it has the mouse button up and down for the widget itself, but because we need to handle the mouse button differently, yeah, so we can perhaps handle the mouse, but that doesn't really help us, because it doesn't tell us what widget it's over internally. That means the only way I can think of is to try and well, create local events within this context. So I mean, we can definitely do that. So this event will be we have an event for the image, did we? So this will be navigation click. And this will be population down. So for the mouse down, we do need the mouse event. Something like that. Is anything in there that's useful? Pointer event, is that what that is? Yeah, pointer event. It calls it a mouse event, but it's a pointer event. As I'll have it by reference. And up here. So effectively just propagate the events straight out of this widget. Can't do it by reference again. Nope, guess not. That's fine. In the root menu, we can then handle it. So we should have a so we have the bind for the different events. Navigation click, population down, population up. So we can handle, we don't want to call it, bind navigation click. And in this case we actually already had an event for enter research on enter research over here, which pretty much took exactly the same stuff because it was a click, just except for the geometry. Don't think there, because it's missing the geometry, we can't call on enter without it. But what we could do to make this simpler now and moving forwards is actually pass the geometry through on the down. So it's a geometry structure. Got it. So we pass both of them in there, and we'll do the same for all three of them. So that means we can tie them directly to other similar events. And realistically, there may be scenarios where we need those values anyway. copy it from the other one? I don't think so. Copy it from set population, set image. Can't seem to copy it from any of the other event dispatchers. Nope. Guess we're defining themselves again. So that's both of them there. And there. And there. And I'd say the advantage here is that now we can create the event, and we should be able to route it straight to the onEnterResearch function. Probably could have done if it was an actual function. Did not work out well because now we've got to define the same two arguments for the handler function. Because that one didn't work, but now that one does. So we'll just test this. Get nothing when we click on that, typically. Okay, so back in the task. Root task even. We are on mouse button on the navigation image, so we are here. And over here we didn't bind. So we'll use that one twice. We'll bind it first before we set up the image. It's a bit scruffy when the lines go so weird, but we don't really want to take up a lot of space just for this. Task. We're definitely going to be doing that process again for various things, but works if we keep it organized. So that should mean that our Text goes up, yep. And now on research task clicked, we just want to do what we did before. We don't have to do the handled stuff. We just have to call that. That should mean that we can go into it now. Yep. So same kind of process there. And finally, we want to tie up the number. So again, we'll do all the binding first. Over there. Don't have a function for it yet, but we have the two original functions, so we're replacing the functions, not sorry, we've got these two functions, haven't we? On mouse button down, modify designers, yeah. So on research task, mouse down, we'll call it population down and population up. So we can put the functions in categories too, which will be useful when we try and organise this. So again, we can't copy the signature when we have functions, so we have to define it all over again. So this one is the population down, that one is the population up. So mouse button down, modify designers, that's where we are. We just need all of that for the down. And that for the up. So I mean, it's pretty much just the same thing, just in a slightly different place. See if that works. Excellent. Bit awkward with the light bulb resizing. Okay, that's annoying. Because it should really be 16 by 16. I mean, we don't seem to have an ability to specify exactly. If we had a canvas panel, can the canvas panel have size? Only basic by specifying fill. Size box would work then, wouldn't it? Let's see if putting in a size box works. So we can say our size box is definitely going to be 16 across. Height I'm not sure of yet. Oh, actually height should be 16 plus however big the font's taking up. Seems to be some awkward space there. What's that? Oh, our border. There we go. See what that's like. That's better. So we know it's going to be that size all the time. So that seems to solve it. We know we can't go over 999, so at some point we'll have to test that. It's the maximum population you can actually have. Obviously there's no limits at the in the game at the moment, but I want to make sure it renders okay with 999 moving forwards. So this old one, vertical box, enter research, all of that can just go. We need to clean up the functions, so that one and that one. I think that one and that one as well. Update research task. That's updating the population of the research task, that's fine. Research task, navigation, click, and population up and down, they're all good. So from the event graph here, so we've got this big block here that handles the setting up of the research route task. Could functionalize that if this graph gets too big. This bit only deals with updating the route population now, the unallocated population either, so that's not a problem. So I think that's going to be pretty much as clean as it's going to get. We can put these into a research task category. Because we're going to have a couple more of those. Over on the right hand side here we're going to have the construction of the factory task and also the actual manufacturing task once you've got a factory. We're obviously going to reuse them for resource allocation or resource collection tasks once we get to them too. So I think actually enter blueprint. What have we missed? Oh, did I? I must have deleted the Ender blueprint binding somewhere as well. Never mind. Yep, that kind of pretty much works as we need it now. Except for I didn't actually fix the click and hold and move out issue. It's one event we didn't tie up, so we'll just get that one done. So in the graph, on the event graph, mouse leave. So we have the mouse leave event. Well, actually, can we tie that up from this context without creating a new one? So we can, yeah, we can call the functions. But we can't get the mouse leave event directly, so we do have to handle it here and have a new dispatcher. Again, just to make sure all the things are propagated along, just in case we ever need them. We'll take the pointer event as well. The root menu, we can bind to the mouse leave, shuffle all that up. I want one of those. Maybe we just need to save that side. To bind to it, compile it first. And this will be on research task mouse leave. And for this, all we need to do is call the on research task population up. We won't tie the mouse events together because they're not really the same mouse event. I'm not sure if there'll be a side effect if we did that later on. So now, that's it. We drag the mouse out, stops going up. Everything that we needed. Okay, so that complicated the little research icon a little bit more than anticipated. wasn't just as simple as getting that value in, but it did find another issue that perhaps would have been more difficult to solve later on in the game process. If we'd have implemented all of them, then that kind of process that I've just gone through would have been a bit more tedious, having to do it multiple times in one go. So finding these issues early on is quite a good thing. Minimap don't work anymore, but the research menu does. Yeah, so I think that'll be all for today. Seems like a small step, but probably quite an important one. Getting this kind of root level task thing done means we can build upon it for the next part. I think there needs to be a bit more of the static data done, so I might try and do that tomorrow and Thursday and resume streaming on Friday. So I have a couple of days to try and fill in a bit more of the static data. It'll be good to try and get the resources in place for the different sectors. Drop out a few more of the images probably. So yeah, probably won't be back till Friday. But yeah, so thanks for watching. Hope you join again soon, and good night for now.